this is Khalifa
Hey.
and Jason.
Hi.
Go ahead and say it.
Jabeille-language-services.
Language services. So Jason and I were in Trinidad, and we have been talking about employee experience and language experience and culture.
Right.
But what's very interesting is I love me some employee experience talk, and what is very important to me is global experiences and how people are able to experience work globally. And Jason,
Jabeille.
I know one of the things he's been talking about and we've been talking about is expansion and growing and what he's trying to create. So I think in this conversation, we talked a little bit about what, given our backgrounds in communication and experience and what we do, how do you envision what you're trying to create in Trinidad in terms of, again, this experience through communication for your own team and for your business, and what do you see for the Caribbean as an area that just grows in this space?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, and I think that is so awesome that I'm able to collaborate not just with a fellow like-minded person, but a former classmate and friend. And the similarities that we have in terms of having spent time abroad, in your case in the US and in my case in Europe, France and Spain. And the way that helps to open our eyes in terms of seeing the developed nations, how they operate, how they think, how they approach things, and to try to bring that same type of mindset and ideology back here to the Caribbean, where some people might want to say it's not as developed, but I guess that's part of the responsibility that organizations such as Jabeille, I feel that we have in terms of trying to bring what we learn back here to the Caribbean and install it and implement it through the added assistance of excellent works such as yours. I think I love
my job. Plug. So like you and I, we've talked about experience and communication, and one of the things we often talk about in Caribbean, in spite of the fact that there are multiple languages in different countries in the Caribbean, we still don't necessarily lean into translation.
Yes.
We still don't necessarily lean into communication. We tend to focus on a dominant language, whatever is that language there, and everybody just have to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
How do we change that?
You know what I find really fascinating? As you are saying those words, what came to my mind is English is actually one of the later languages that was spoken here in Trinidad. Just the name Trinidad is Spanish for Trinity. So you already have a history of having Spanish here as a language. If you go into Paramin right now, Patois.
So a whole carnival because of the French.
All right, Juve. We have so much terminology, so much history, so much culture that involves and includes language. Yet, as you say, the general thought, the general idea is that English and English only. And that's so ironic that for a country that has so much history and so much relationship with language and multiple languages at that, it's supposed to be easy for us to communicate with our Venezuelan brothers because we have Spanish as part of our culture. It's supposed to be easy for us to interact with our Martinican, Guadeloupean, French Guyanese brothers and sisters because of that shared history with Patois. But yet and still, a lot of us will find it so difficult to be able to communicate, and not just in a language sense, but in the idea of meeting people where they are, figuratively speaking.
Yeah. And as we were talking, what came to my mind is the idea that we need to make these non-English words into English.
Okay.
To use them. So because we don't even think about it, right? We in Trinidad, we talk about Dimanche Gras, Juve.
Southern proper.
All French words, and somehow they've become English words to us because of how we use them, right?
Comme si,
Like,
comme ça.
yeah, we forget that it's so
Macapuchette.
indoctrinated in our language. We've made it effectively English,
Facts.
right? And so I think we take for granted the beauty of the language that we do share with other countries, and we tend to just kind of roll it into English instead of really realizing we can expand it outwards to other languages instead, which is always something that, and I'm guilty. I'm guilty. I studied Spanish at advanced levels a long time ago.
Quite some time ago.
Sorry, Miss Gantat. And I did not practice. And you rely so heavily on English. And I'm doing more global work now, and I have deep regrets. I have deep regrets because one of the things that made sometimes travel and stuff easier for me is you know some Spanish, you could kind of figure out some French because you know some Spanish.
Yeah.
You could kind of figure out some Italian because you know what I mean. And it's just about that exposure to that language. I think we've been taught to become too comfortable.
I agree.
With a dominant language.
I agree.
And allows us to isolate ourselves just a little bit.
And I might add to that at least from my experience, I think that is even more pronounced among English-speaking countries. Yes. So whether the US, whether the UK, which is really close to France, where I have been for many years, and even here in the English-speaking Caribbean, I think sometimes, as you're saying, we tend to think that everybody else should conform to us as opposed to the other way around. And like, I see so many connections with the idea of the benefits of speaking to someone in their language, figuratively and literally, and the correlation to like the employee experience that you talk about in terms of it is so much better for the employee if they are with an employer that is able to speak their language, so to speak.
Yes. And as we talk about that, so that means that there's a gap.
Agreed.
That needs to be filled. That should be filled. Agreed. As we become more and more globalized, and less isolationist, in spite of what we might be thinking at times. I think we're still globalized. I don't think we have planes, we have phones, we got social media. It's very difficult to be as isolationist as we might want to be, right? How do we make these changes? What do you think you're bringing to the table as jabeille? Did I get it right? Jabeille.
All right, that's good.
What are you bringing to the table? What are you bringing to the table for your company? What is your intention? And then, you know, in a perfect world, what does jabeille become? Right.
So I guess hearing you describe it that way, I'm seeing it a little the other way around, meaning I at least at this point, I can't allow myself to think of globally what jabeille can represent. I'm more focused on what very locally what jabeille will represent, meaning that like I have an immediate focus on my direct surroundings, our employees, our direct customers, the linguists that we work with directly. Like how I see it is I want to be sure that I am implementing the right policies, the right procedures, the right practices, the right experience for our direct circle, and the hope and the expectation is that eventually, as we get bigger, as we get more globalized, so to speak, that the ideology and the philosophy and the core values will spread along at the same time and hopefully reach that global effect that you're referencing.
I'm excited about it. I really am. I'm excited. We talked about, like, you know, all of us were in school together. Yeah. Who would have known we would be adults doing adult things? Just insane. And on social media to boot. Adulting is overrated. But I'm like, you know, it's funny. So we also have a friend, Tish, and what I've come to realize is a lot of what we're doing is experiences. So we talk about our friend Tish. She's creating experiences from a static perspective. Right. So she does the experience of how does a place look, right?
Right.
How do I create the ambience for weddings, for events? You
Right.
have you're
Yes.
creating these experiences through communication, through language.
Yes.
And then I'm creating experiences through work.
Yes.
And what that looks like, and our lives just intersect, and that's just us in a small, isolated group, and not one of us spoke to each other about that type of stuff.
So eerie,
right? That we have that's just
even though we were all going our separate directions,
ways. We were living on 3 different continents,
literally on different corners of the globe, and yet and still the fields that we find ourselves in and the experiences that we are seeking to provide to others, the value that we are seeking to provide to others, there's such a correlation is really eerie. Weird.
And it shows, right? There's a need.
Yes.
There's a need. There's a gap. I think there's an understanding that experience matters, and be it through culture, be it through what you do at work, be it through policy, be it through language.
Yep.
Experience matters, and I think I'm at Jason's office right now, and thank you, Mama. It's beautiful in here. It is beautiful in here. The ambience is beautiful in here, and I tell people, experience is about that quiet thing you feel that makes you feel like you're in a space for success. And I'll see some big things.
So, as you mentioned that, I remember you saying in one of our previous discussions that experience should be something that is felt in the quiet. Would you mind like going over that again? Please?
Yes. So generally, when somebody's having a good experience, I always tell people, think of a vacation. When you're having a good experience, it's quiet because you're in it, you're living in it, you're experiencing it, right? But when you're having a bad experience, it's extremely noisy. Every element of it is so salient. If you lost your bags in the airport, if they had a fete outside while you were trying to sleep.
A fete is a party, by the way.
If fireworks went off while you were taking a nap, anything that makes it go, what is going on? It's so salient to you. And if you think of any element of work, and when I think about it, I think of with language too. Right. When you're reading a book, right, and you're listening to a book, and then a sentence is spelled like it's wrong, or a word is spelled wrong, it just takes you out of it. And that's all you remember. Why did they spell this thing this way, right? Experience is something that is felt where you can feel immersed in it, and it sets you up to be out of the experience, right? Because you're so into it. But once you get pulled out, it's because it's noisy, right? Because it's difficult to get re-enter the experience. And you find that at work, you find that in communication, you find that in culture, and that's why miscommunications happen, right? Because the experience of the communication is not working. It's not working. And so you find when you're having a bad experience, it's so salient, it's unforgettable, right? And it's that whole once bitten, twice shy type feeling that people get. So if you've ever thought about when you've had a bad experience communicating with somebody, right? You don't want to talk to them again.
Facts.
You don't want to talk to them again because it's so stressful, because it's noisy in your mind. And so, one of the things I was talking about the other day with my husband, I remember we were talking about one of the things I think people take for granted about people who speak multiple languages and speak it well is you have to learn to think in the language.
Correct.
And what a lot of us do is we're thinking, like for me, I'll speak for English, we're thinking in our language and then translating it. And that's what makes it more difficult. And on the other end, the person who's listening to you is like, right? But when they're thinking in the language, they've switched because the experience that they're about to create is so much better. It's so much smoother because they're thinking from the thought to the tongue. It's their language. You've considered them in the language. That's what I do.
That's really deep. Because now I'm thinking about my own self. Like the fact of having lived in France for so many years. I remember when I first got to France, as you're describing it, I wouldn't just speak French. I would think in English, think of how to convert that into French and then speak. Whereas within, I don't know, maybe the first year or so, it got to a point where I didn't need to think in English. I could think directly in French and speak in French. And even more so, because I had that personal connection with the surroundings, with the culture, with the environment. Like, there's so many things that, there isn't even an English equivalent. There are certain words in French that there is no English equivalent, and vice versa. So it's only in actually trying to immerse yourself in the culture, trying to, I guess in your case, trying to put yourself in the shoes of the employee is where you're able to then understand where they are coming from and speak their language.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I tell people, I work with data all the time, and I tell people, like, you know what's one of the most important skills to have as a data analyst? Humility. Humility. And one of the reasons is the assumption that you don't know everything. And the person on the other end knows something. And that's how you communicate better with them, because you have them in mind first. When you're about to communicate this data, when you're about to interpret this data. So I'm thinking of them and I'm interpreting the data for them.
That's cool.
I'm not interpreting it for me. I am an analyst. If I'm speaking to an analyst, I can speak in tech tone. But when I'm speaking to an executive, I have to translate what's in my head, technically, into words that I know appeal to the executive I'm talking to. And even further, I gotta break it down that if I am speaking to the CHRO versus the CEO versus a CFO, I'm speaking different languages that I'm pulling, right? And it's because I am, in my mind, creating the experience for them first. Before I do it. So I am thinking as them. So when the data is coming to my head, I'm thinking as them. And we do this in other parts of our lives, right? If you've ever had a toddler, they will ask you questions to death. And you learn very quickly. You got to think ahead. You got to think 5 steps ahead, because they will not stop asking you questions until they understand. So after a while, any parent will tell you, as jaded and tired as you might be, once that child asks that first question, you are already 5 questions ahead in your mind, because you've created the experience for them first. And you're also kind of saving yourself.
Correct.
Right? And so I think we do it so subtly, it becomes so automatic that we don't realize we're always creating experiences.
That's deep.
And then when you're trying to figure out what to do, you have to learn in the beginning to be intentional with how you create the experience. And when you're being intentional at the very beginning of creating experiences, you tend to be a little bit worried about how you sound, worried about how you will, will come across. But as you start to get more comfortable with creating experiences, it becomes easier to start with the experience in your head. And I think that's what you're trying to create.
Well, that's what, as I'm hearing you say those words, I'm thinking like my mom and I'll call her the head designer here.
Moms, yes.
Like, as you said, I didn't realize how intentional we were. But maybe she knew how intentional she wanted to be. But the idea is that we want to provide a working environment that makes it a quiet place, figuratively speaking, for the employee, that when they do come here, they feel as though there's positive energy, there's motivation for them to be even more productive. We're not trying to add to their stress, we try to take away from their stress. And little things like, the color, the choices of color, the little stations that we put in place for the employees, the little extras, little plates, little cutlery, try to put as many things and as many touches as possible in place to make the employee experience as seamless and as comfortable as possible.
Yeah, so it's all about reducing the noise. One of the things we joked about earlier today is, when it comes to employee experience and when it comes to experiences we try to recreate, our job is to not make them worse. It is easy to take away from, right? So take away from language, take away from culture, take away from making people feel like they could fail, right? It's easy to take away. It would be easy for you to paint this bright red and it doesn't go with any aesthetic, and you're like,
what am I doing here?
Like, what is this doing here? This is confusing, right? Or distracting. It's easy to do that because, we say we do that. Again, intentionality is really, really important in creating experiences. And it's okay to make mistakes from here to there. Maybe you do paint the wall red. Everybody's confused. You're like, maybe we need to repaint this wall. Because this is the most confusing wall in the room. And so you think about life. Life is iterative. And you will not always get it right. It's like language. Like you said, initially you would think in one language, translate, and as you get more comfortable, you iterate, you figure it out.
And I think the connective part there is what you referenced a little earlier, which is humility. If you go into any endeavor with the mindset of, yes, I know French, but I'm not thinking that I know it all. I'm not thinking that I alone know. So that if it is a different employee or a different situation or something comes up that causes me to have to question, I'm going to question with humility and saying, okay, I think that I know this, but maybe I'm not 100% sure. Or maybe the context might be different. Okay, I know how to say this word in this particular context to this particular person, but maybe for another person in another context, it means something different. So having the humility to be open-minded enough to question your own self at times, it may end up being for your benefit in the long run.
Absolutely, because that's what experiences are. You create good experiences for other people, you create good experiences for yourself. Think of any good conversation.
Like this one.
Like this one! You create a good experience. Good experiences come. It will attract a good experience. And good experiences tend to attract good experiences. But let me tell you, a bad experience will shut it all down.
We're trying to avoid that.
Immediately. But, you know, as always, have to come all the way to Trinidad to talk to you. And then hopefully one day we can have a conversation with Tish.
Yeah.
We can talk about all of our experiences and what that means.
Aesthetic. That would be cool.
So
you're welcome.
Yeah. So.
But this was fun.
It was.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Look at that. You gotta go 219.